So I've just started grade 7. So I'm working on Pink Minor. Hello.
How did you feel about that, Daniel?
It was the second half was quite scrappy. Again, I'm sure, like all of us, it was not as good as it is in practice.
Yeah, it's always harder to play in front of other people. And it's not like doing the video exams where you can do 77 takes now, is it?
Exactly.
You just get the one go.
Exactly. And yeah, you know, my defense, I've only been learning this about a month. That's the first time I played for anybody apart from you, Robert, or my girlfriend. So it's yeah, it's challenging.
Okay, now what I suggested actually to Yanlin this morning, she was actually doing exactly the same thing, and I was suggesting to her to find a speed that she feels like she can control the whole thing.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think some of it was I started off quite slowly, and then I think the adrenaline of performing and perhaps the need to perform the piece rather than play it in a practice environment, I sped up faster than I should have.
Especially in the second half. There are areas within that you've only just recently, like in the last week, started working on, aren't there? I think
yeah, exactly.
Bar 25, this one. Wasn't that one of the newest parts?
Yeah, I think I learned that a couple of weeks ago, but it's one where I'm struggling because, especially with the change in dynamics as well. It's yeah.
So the advice is always to start at a speed you feel you're in control. Yeah. and I'm
Yes.
sure you play a lot more accurately the notes. Can I just, with you, just have a little look at the lengths of some of the notes?
Yes.
Because we this is a little bit older now. This section from bar 16. Shouldn't it? And just to try and lengthen some of them and shorten some of them exactly as it's prescribed.
Okay.
Just have a little look at that bit. Yeah, that's better. And we decided we were going to pedal through to the end of the bar, didn't we? Just to help.
Yeah, on the tied notes, on those on the second chords. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Yanlin, you're doing the same piece. What did you make of it?
I don't know. Mainly just that the parts were like very sped up and like slowed down at parts. This is what I also do, but yeah.
Okay, so would you like to show us how to play all at one speed then, even if it's a slower speed?
Sure.
Put you on the spot there. I mean, it's follow your own advice.
I'll play the two parts I did separately. Yes.
Okay, good. Right, now, any ideas? Well, anyone want to suggest? The tempo is supposed to be 126.
I think
And the latest bit around bar 21. Yeah, that new bit you were learning. That's about right. What sort of tempo does anyone think she might have been going at the beginning?
You see, I would have said the beginning was probably about 126 with that second bit was obviously slower. So I would have gone with 126 and maybe about 95.
Well, actually, the newer bit was 126-ish, maybe a little bit slower, maybe high teens, 118 or something like that.
Okay.
The beginning
must have been about 150.
that was very fast.
It was about 150 to start off with.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's really well played.
Well, yes, but it was almost getting to the point of getting a bit scruffy because it was so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really got to control the beginning there. That's the problem when and this is why when people start at the beginning of a piece, when they're starting to learn a piece, and then at the end it gets less and less and less familiar, and it just grinds down to a halt. And this piece I've often suggested with both of you, I think, to start learning from bar 51, which is the hardest, probably the hardest section.
Yeah, and that's what we did. Yeah.
All right, and you'll probably be playing that a little bit slower than 150. I mean, if you can play that at 150, I'll give you a medal.
Well, I think I mentioned to Robert that when the first week I learned that 51 to 54, just those first 4 bars. I said to Robert, I listened to his performance of it, and those 4 bars, Robert played it in 9 seconds or about 10 seconds. It took me 140 seconds to sight read and play those 4 bars the first time. So yeah.
Okay.
How, but now I do it in about 10 seconds like Robert. So it just shows practice. You know what can seem impossible becomes possible.
Okay, Yelin, do you want to try that little section that we're talking about, bar 51?
Okay.
You know the bit, don't you?
Was that a bit far?
No, no. You're a fraction under 120.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. And I would stick with that. So basically, it's the main theme at the beginning that needs to slow down.
Yeah.
And you're just so familiar with it, aren't you, that it's just getting faster and faster. So we've got to hold back on that. All right, Harshini, do you want to turn your microphone on? Now, you've got some good news for everyone, haven't you? Tell us your good news.
I got 134, a distinction, 150 in my grade 2 exam.
Yeah, well done. 134, you said, did you?
Wow.
Yeah, excellent. Right, you've only just started working at grade 3, haven't you? Have you got something that you'd like to play for us? A disco Baroque you were working on recently, weren't you?
I'm gonna play up to the bar before the last line because that's only where I feel confident up to.
That's fine. Yeah, but you've only learned the first like 3/4 of it, so basically, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Let's have a listen to what you've done with this new grade 3 piece. Okay. Yeah, and then it's a new phrase that you said you haven't quite mastered yet. Is that right?
Yeah, so
Yeah. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about this piece, and a lot of people are going to miss, but we've been working on the articulation at the beginning. I don't know if everyone can see it, but there is a different articulation to the second phrase. There is no slurring marked at the beginning. And then the second line, a slurring marked in pairs, yeah, which you're doing very nicely. But can I just draw your attention to bar 4, the last 3 notes? Is there a slur there or not?
no,
There isn't. Yeah. Can you just play me bar 4 and continue the separation until you get to bar 5?
Okay.
Is that a hard place to start? Do you want to start at the beginning? Is it easier?
Probably.
You know, you see the habit, you're going dee-da-da. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be separate. Da-da-da. And then the next bar, dee-da, dee-da. The slurs are marked.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And there's no slur there marked. That's it. Okay. Rachel. Again, we're recently on to something new, aren't we?
Yeah, so what I was just going to do, so you don't have to endure this much longer, is just play about, I think I've got about 7 or 8 bars, that's all.
Are we talking about your new grade 8 piece, are we?
Yeah. Well, you didn't want to hear Beethoven again, did you?
No, we heard that last time. And you've probably heard it enough now, haven't you?
Oh, don't. No, I've binned the book.
So you finally got around to submitting it. Do you want to share a little bit with us about your exam experience?
Okay, so I entered the exam thinking that 2 months would be enough to do the recording, and I thought Daniel's take of 77 recordings was a lot, but I'd probably done 1,000. I mean, it's horrendous, and it kind of it just almost becomes insurmountable because you're just looking for perfection, you know, and then I don't know, it's incredibly difficult doing the recordings. And so anyway, I submitted it, but it was you know, it was like I was doing 4 to 6 hours a day trying to get the recordings out. I think I must have driven the neighbours mad, and you can't even do it with the headphones, you know what I mean? And I think the reason I couldn't record well is because I was really nervous about upsetting all my neighbours with the same pieces, and then I would do, say, 3 pieces beautifully, and then I'd totally mess up an easy bar in the 4th piece, and then you have to start all over again, and it's completely soul destroying. And I don't see why we can't do one piece separately and put our best performance forward.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but then the whole idea of performing exams is piano. They give you a mark for the consistency, don't they? And that's they're testing your ability to perform consistently a whole program, and that's part of the exam. Otherwise, it might be a little bit too easy, I think. But as an overall thing, do you think, now having been through the experience, both you and Daniel, and actually Harshini as well, and oh no, you didn't quite do your you never got around to your recordings, did you? Yeah, then okay, we almost did, and then decided to skip that grade. But anyway, do you think they're a good thing?
Yeah, I do, because I don't ever want to sit a practical again, ever. I don't enjoy the singing. I don't enjoy playing live in someone else's house on a piano I'm not familiar with, you know, and my nerves and my hands shaking, and it destroys my my love of the piano. So I'll still stick with the performance regardless of the hell you go through on the. And also what me and Daniel thought was a really good thing to do to alleviate any stress, rather than entering your exam thinking, oh, I'm going to be ready in 6 weeks or whatever. Don't enter exam at all. Get your recording done first, and then once your recording's perfect, whether you've spent a year, whatever, then you can go for the exam.
I was about to say the same thing. I'm going to do that going forward. I can't believe once I booked my grade 6, I thought that was stupid. I don't have to book the exam and then do the recording. I can do the recording. Once I've got a good recording, then I can enter the exam. And that way you don't have the pressure of although it's good to give yourself a deadline, otherwise it just goes on forever. But if you have, you've got to submit it by this afternoon, you've got the pressure of, right, if I don't have I've got to get a good recording. Whereas if you just don't book the exam, learn your pieces, do recordings whenever you want, and once you've got a good one, or you're good enough to enter, then enter the exam with that recording. And that takes the pressure of a deadline off. But I agree with Rachel, the performance grades are fantastic. I think regardless of how stressful I think Rachel and I found them, I would rather that stress to sitting in front of an examiner, having them shout out scales for me to do, and oral.
Okay.
And as Rachel said, I think the familiarity of a piano, I think to people like me that are never going to be, you know, concert pianists, I feel a lot more comfortable playing on my piano that I've practiced on, and I know how it plays, to going to a stranger's piano that, especially most of us, maybe are learning on digital. You go to an exam and you may be playing on acoustic. The feel is going to be very different. And yeah, it's not what I would want in an exam.
Okay. Do you think there's anything negative about the repetitious nature of doing recording after recording, in terms of your musicality suffering and your love of the pieces and everything else just becoming very flat and mechanical? Is there a danger of that?
Absolutely, and it does.
Yeah. Because I think, Rachel, at some point you were getting so fed up with recording, and at some points there was one, I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying, but there was one video you did where you were actually sighing between the pieces again, like this, and you were just fed up, and it ruined your performance.
And I think as well, Robert, I think that the order in which you learn the pieces can play into that as well. Just my experiences for I've only done grade 5 and 6. For those two, I started learning them, the more challenging pieces, or the ones that I felt would be more challenging or I didn't enjoy as much. I learned those first. Yeah. But all that means is that you're playing those the longest, which means that given that you don't particularly like them, or you like them less to start with, and you're playing them the longest, you are really sick and tired of them by the time you come to.
I thought the Mozart was growing on you.
You know what? I play the Mozart now just to relax. It has. Just for those of you in grade 6, I hated the Mozart. Really struggled with it, but now I absolutely love it. It's the only one I can still remember off the top of my head. But for grade 7, I'm learning the pieces that I like and enjoy the most first, and leaving the more challenging or less liked ones to the end, so that hopefully they're still freshest when I get to do the exam, rather than they're tired.
Good point. Anyway, we're interrupting Rachel giving us a few bars of her new grade 8, the
So
Helen
this
Hopkirk
is
Air, isn't it? Yeah?
air, yeah. Let's check the piano, hold on.
Now we are talking about just a week of even just starting this, so I'm not expecting no perfect or fluency or anything like that at this point. But one thing, even from this point, to try and be totally aware of, and it's a good technique to get into as you get more familiar with the piece, is the voicing. And this one particularly is quite rich in its texture of the accompaniment, which can be very easy to blur out the tune. All this. And actually gets quite monotonous listening to it. And that's not interesting listening. Yeah. So we've got to really try and tone that down a little bit. And a little bit richer maybe in the right hand. And you can, it's just like sottovoce underneath, you know? Just try that first line for me and just make the left hand as soft as you possibly can. Still having too much left. Less, yes.
I'm sorry.